Okay, so here is my 2004 Dodge Ram 2500 with a 96 P-pumped 12 valve. So today I'm going to show you guys how to get everything off here and do a grid heater delete for absolutely free. If you want to rebuy gaskets, then that's the only money that you're going to have into it. But here you go. So this is a 13mm bolt, 10 millimeters. You're going to want to get all them, and then the 11mm clamp in most cases. This one I lost an 11, so I'm using the 7/16. So you're going to want to get that intake off first, and then show you where to go from there. Oh, and don't forget this 10mm bolt that holds the dipstick tube on. Okay, now that we got the intake off, you can see the grid heater in here. It's really not too bad to do, but these gaskets are a little crusty, so you're going to have a bunch of 10mm bolts all the way through. You're going to want to get all of them. Now, something to make mention here is there is going to be a few of them blocked by the lines. You can see right there, there's a bolt that's blocked by one of the injection lines, and then there's one all the way in the back. So I'll show you here in a minute how to do all the injection lines, but I'm going to get some of these bolts off first. Okay, so now that I am down to the last two bolts that I can't physically get, I'm using a 19mm wrench. You're going to want to undo all of these injection lines. Now mine are really crusty, and the back one there, I needed to remove the intake tube to get it, but all of the other ones I did not need to. But I am spraying every one of them with WD lubricant, and they definitely need it. So I'm going to get this clamp off here and pull that tube out so I can get number 6. Now I do want to say 2 of these 10mm bolts that hold down the intake plate will hold down the injection line clamps. So here you can see I got all of them up. There you go. So now we got all of them off. This will just pull off as one piece, as long as your lines aren't extremely rusty. I mean, mine are pretty bad, but they're not like that bad yet. I could actually pull them off in one piece. So you can see I'm going to spray that here. As you can see, I've already done it a little bit, but clean them off, spray them out. Make sure you don't get any dirt or debris inside of the lines. Now you can see back there, if you're still running your stock fuel filter housing, you don't actually need to get it out of the, move it or anything. You can just take the bolts out, leave the lines hooked up, and just slide this out from underneath of it. It does make it a little tricky to put the gasket underneath, but as you're sliding it back in with the gasket and the plenum itself, but it is doable, and that's how I did it. So, but yeah, you don't need to get it out of the way. You can just leave it right there and it's fine. So now you can see that we got all of the lines off. There's 2 10mm that I can now get to. Now you can see the fuel filter housing is actually loose now, in place, and now we're going to get to prying this thing up. So a little pry bar or a screwdriver, flathead screwdriver, will definitely help you do that. You're not going to get it by hand most of the time. So there you go, get that right underneath there. Now again, you can probably reuse that gasket depending on how old it is, but I just prefer to replace it. If you wanted to do it for no cost at all, you can reuse that gasket, but I'm just not going to. And ignore the fact that there's a bunch of crap in there. I let everything fall into the intake, and then I have a vacuum that I'll get out later in the video, so don't start cringing now. But there's the plate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a razor blade, and I went through a couple of these because mine are just, I don't have really any good ones, but you'll just want to get underneath of it and just pry the whole thing. Make sure not to gouge the material, or gouge the intake. So there you go. So there is 2 10mm nuts that you'll have to take off. That's for the wire harness, so take them off, get them out of the way. This side is also a 10mm. You're going to want to take a wrench on the other side because it may break free, but it's definitely going to get stuck. So put the wrench on the back side and there you go. Here's a better shot of it. You can see you're going to stick the wrench right up underneath there. Unfortunately, it's hard to film and do this at the same time, so, but there's kind of the point I'm trying to make. Here's what the underside looks like. So you're going to want to get those. That's 2 10s on the bottom, 12 on the other side. So you can break them free, but then you're going to have to take a wrench on the other side because it will just free spin. Be sure to keep the hardware and everything in the same orientation when you pull it out because you're going to be reusing it to seal the holes. Also, be sure not to lose those little orange seals in there. You're definitely not going to want to do that. So keep them in there because, like I said, they're going to go back in. Here's what it looks like, and you can see that it'll come up through the top. You just want to take it and beat it with a hammer a couple of times. It'll come right out. A little persuasion. Don't leave all the pieces on the ground, obviously. So pick all that up. Got to get my thumbnail somehow. Now there you can see completely gutted. I put the nuts and the bolts back in so it'll seal. All good there. Make sure you clean up your surfaces, guys. AutoZone unfortunately decided to give me a gasket that was bent, so I kind of got to fix my gasket. But other than that, I'm going to get the surfaces cleaned up, and there you go. So get everything back on, line everything up. You can do this in any order you want to, but I just decided to do it the hard way and get all the hardware in so I knew where everything went. And then I'll tighten down the lines later. Get all the bolts tightened down. I got my lines tightened down. Grab these bolts out so I can put my intake plenum back on, my intake horn, whatever you want to call it. I just like to make sure that before I tighten any bolts that there is no kink in the gasket itself. So yeah, clean that surface up really good. Definitely don't want a boost leak here, so ignore my makeshift razor blade. I was running out of blades and that was all I had left. And this gasket only goes on one way. You see it fits perfectly there. It does not fit the other way. It's not a square. There you go. You can see it's put on nicely. Alright, so there you can see I got everything back together. I did just do the fuel filter too. So my truck, being that it is on a 04, I actually have the factory 12-valve fuel pump on the side of the block, but I also have the factory in-tank pump. So I don't actually have to prime the system. So I did the fuel filter and cleaned out all the lines and everything. So there's absolutely no fuel, so I'm just letting the fuel pump run for a minute. So, hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe.
Come on. All right, let's do this again. What? Oh. Damn, yours wasn't even that loud.
Jesus.
Get the fuck away from my truck!